So you can either print these out, because I'm way prepared this year, or you can make sure all of this stuff is in your notebook. If you print them out, I would suggest you have them 3-hole punched and keep them in a notebook. I am not going to be writing down the definition to these words. I'm going to be telling you what the definition is, but it'll keep the video a lot shorter. However, I do expect you to go to your book or online and look up what each one of these are and have a definition, because there will be random times where you may or may not have a vocabulary pop quiz that you can use your notes on. And if you have them written down, easy A. If you don't, not so much. So, a variable is a letter that represents a value that can change or vary. Like an X. X's can be whatever value they tell you they are. We'll look at that later. A coefficient is the number that is multiplied by the variable in an algebraic expression. That is the number that is right in front of the variable. So like if you have 3y, 3 is the coefficient, y is the variable. An algebraic expression is an expression that has one or more variables. An example would be 3y. Constant is a value that does not change. Something that's constant stays the same. So if you have y minus 5, the 5 is constant. We cannot change it. It tells us exactly what the value of that number is. Evaluate is to find the value of a numerical or algebraic expression, so to find the answer. And substitute is to replace a variable with a number or other expression in the algebraic expression. So if they say y equals 5, every time you see a y, you would put a 5 in for it. So we're going to go down to example 1, and it says evaluate, which we just said meant to find the value or the answer, each expression for the given value of the variable, which remember the variable is the letter. So in this we have x minus 5. X is the variable, 5 is the constant. We do not change the 5. So, in for x, we're going to put 12 because they tell us that x equals 12. So we put a 12 there. And I always put, when I substitute a number for a letter, I always put that number in parentheses. Okay? So we substitute 12 for x. And then we subtract because there's a subtraction sign between them. And the answer is 7. Now, x could be anything. They could tell you x was 42, 1,000 million, whatever. Okay. So the next one says 2y plus 1 for y equals 4. So we're going to substitute 4 for y because it tells us that y equals 4. And then, like I said above, anytime we see the variable or the letter that we're substituting for, we're going to put it in parentheses. This one's already in parentheses. And the reason for that is so that we remember, if there is a coefficient, that we multiply it by whatever we put in for the variable. So in this case, 4. So we have 2 times 4, which is 8. And then we add, because we're going to use the order of operations. And remember, that is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, left to right as you come to them, and then addition, subtraction, left to right as you come to them. Okay. That doesn't look right. Anyways. Okay, so we have more vocabulary, and that threw me off because usually it's all at the beginning. So, our next objective is to write rational numbers in equivalent forms. Equivalent means equal. Rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction where your denominator is not 0. If you have a denominator of 0, it is not okay. See, n over 0, not okay. 0 over a number is okay. So, Relatively prime. Relatively prime means the following. Two numbers are relatively prime if they have no common factors other than 1. So like 3 and 7. The only common factor 3 and 7 have is 1. Okay? So we are going to look at simplifying on example 1. Simplifying 16/80ths. What we want to do is we want to figure out what the common factor of 16 and 80 is. And in this case, they show you that 16 has a factor pair of 1 and 16, and 80 has a factor pair of 5 and 16. So 16 does go into both of them. So 16 is a common factor. So you're going to divide each, the numerator and denominator, by 16. And when you do that, you get 1/5. Now you could have divided by 2, you could have divided by 4, but when you simplify, you want to put it in its simplest form. So if you only want to divide each number once, you want to use the greatest common factor, or you will have to do your simplifying more than one time. The next one is -18/29. Okay, they tell us we have a factor pair of 2 and 9, and we have a factor pair of 1 and 29. That is because 29 is a prime number, so only 1 and 29 go into it. And because 18 and 29 only have 1 in common with each other, they are relatively prime. So there are no common factors, and they are relatively prime. So, if there are no common factors besides 1 and they are relatively prime, well, the answer is just what you started out with, and it's just -18/29. So you actually don't have to do any work for that because it's already in its simplest form. Example 2 says write each decimal as a fraction in the simplest form. Now, you have to look at the number in the last place first. Okay, it goes out 2 decimal places, and in this case, 7 is in the hundreds place. It's the last number on that number, or on that list of numbers. So since it's in the hundreds place, everything to the left of the decimal is your whole number. So we're going to put a 5 there. Everything to the right of your decimal makes a fraction. So because 7 is the hundredths place, that tells us that the denominator is 100, and then all the numbers to the right of the decimal are going to go in the numerator and go over 100. Now sometimes you will have to simplify these, sometimes they're relatively prime. 37 is a prime number, and 37 does not go into 100, so the only common factor they have is 1, so they are relatively prime. So you're done. Okay, so looking at 0.622. Here is another one. We're going to look to the number in the last place. Okay, it's that 2, and it's in the thousandths place. Now, hopefully, you know, that says thousandths, by the way. Hopefully you know your decimal places, and if you don't, you might want to print yourself out a place value chart. It's not something I'm going to do for you this year, but you can do that on your own. Now, since it goes out to the thousandths place, that tells us that our fraction, the denominator, is going to be 1,000, and then whatever's in the numerator is going to, or whatever's numbers are to the right of the decimal is going to go in the numerator. And because there are no numbers to the left besides 0 of that decimal, we do not have a whole number. However, 622 and 1000 are both even numbers, so we can therefore assume that 2 can go into both of them. So we can divide this by 2, and the 1000 by 2. 622 divided by 2 is 311, and 1000 divided by 2 is 500. Okay, now we got lucky. This blank's dividing, and we were able to divide by 2, which we knew because they were even, and it actually gave us the simplest form. Most of the time, dividing by 2 is not going to give you the simplest form. But again, like I said, we got lucky. Okay, write each fraction as a decimal. If the numerator is greater than the denominator, you are going to have a decimal number or a mixed number. There's going to be a whole number with it. So, when you divide this, bottom number always goes outside the box. Top number, or the numerator, always goes inside the box, followed by a decimal and a 0, 0. This decimal goes straight up, and then you can do long division and you get 1.2. However, if you were to work that out, you would see that you keep getting 2 over and over and over and over again. So you would put a line over it to show that it is a repeating decimal. Now, as long as you can show me how to set that up, I don't care if you use a calculator. So, like I said, as long as you can show me that this is how I set it up, if I had to do long division because I didn't have a calculator, you can use a calculator. So, the next fraction, the numerator is smaller than the denominator, so you're not going to have a whole number. So again, same thing. Bottom number goes out. Top number goes in, followed by 0, 0, okay? And because you show me that the decimal point goes straight up and that you know how to set that up, you can put that in your calculator and you get 0.35. Okay, because that has nothing repeating, it's called a terminating decimal. It ends. And because it ends, the remainder is 0. So the fraction of 7/20 is equal to the decimal of 0.35. Now, if you're watching this, you have to do some prove you know what you're doing problems. Everyone does. Your prove you know what you're doing problems are the check it out problems. So you need to do 1, 2, and 3, and then come show them to me so I can approve that you know what you're talking about. That's it for today.